David Tulis.
Yes, I may be the smartest guy, but you, my listener, who wears an open collar, or you who wears a regular bow tie, can be the smartest in your category of people in your neck of the woods. If you just tune in for a few minutes, I just ask you for a couple minutes every day of your time. And I'm here to serve David Tulis, the editor of Nooganomics.com, the editor, the writer, the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga, one that exudes grace, one that exudes a positive perspective, one that offers a very can-do way of thinking for you, my listener, wanting you to face the prospect of the coming national meltdown, the one that will be characterized, as it's written about later, as a crisis in confidence, just like the meltdown in 2008, where no one was confident that the debts, the paper debts of others were worthy, and there was suspicion among lenders and banks and all kinds of financial houses about the solidity of the neighbor, right? Everyone was looking at the neighbor and saying, your debts are corrupted. You have these cheap mortgages, these low-grade mortgages in your portfolio, and we don't know where, so we're gonna not touch anything that you've got to offer, and stay away from us. We are not going to talk with you or do business with you. That'll be a crisis in confidence. And you, my listener, face that just like I do. I'm predicting that you're going to lose half your net worth in the meltdown. And so what are you going to do now? How can we of liquidity and in the direction of local investment? That's what I think we should be doing, is divesting nationally and investing locally, having confidence in local people, having confidence in what we know, right? Who we know, what we know about our businesses, our fields of endeavor, our professions, and start something new. Start something new. You can buy a franchise, you can buy a business, you can start a business, you can invest in a business run by your teenage daughter. You know, she's a very smart internet gal already. Maybe she needs 20,000. Why don't you say, look, let me give you 20,000 to use. I'm an investor. I would like to make a partial claim on your business, and you just pay me back when you have liquidity and a little profit. I'm willing to wait, and I can have my principal returned and a profit, and your mom and I will be happy. That's something you could do in your own family. Maybe you know someone in your own family who has a good record of success, but who's kind of between enterprises, or maybe between jobs. And so you're going to say to him, well, what's going on in your field? What do you see is happening? What can we develop? We're here to look over things that might be of benefit to us, and maybe we can help you along the way. So capitalism really is premised on character. Prosperity is premised on character. If you don't have character, you simply can't have capital. Capital is the accruing of power, marketplace power, the ability to buy things, right? The ability to influence things, because there's money, there are assets, there's wealth available. The people who are wealthy often do many good things, right? They're charitable donors. They support teams. They support local charities. They give money to churches, to nonprofit organizations, to charities of all kinds. They support foreign missions. They send people, such as the family that runs Love Without a Cause, going to Zimbabwe and performing. I don't think they're back yet, but they were planning to perform 60 craniofacial surgeries among children who otherwise will have just a miserable life and will be treated like human detritus their whole lives, and even some killed and sold for their body parts after being fattened up. That is something that that family here in Chattanooga, Santhoth Matthews and his wife and children, that's what they're working on. So they get money from in their fundraising from people like you, right? From people who have capital and who invested and give it away. And in fact, McClellan Foundation in Chattanooga is all about helping wealthy people give away their money. It's about how to wisely give away millions and millions of dollars. Some of it earned in the modern speculative economy, some of it earned by just hard work and growing reputation of local companies that have owners at the top who are so rich they don't worry about the details like I do. Right, I'm a small businessman here with a tremendous media platforms, but it's still a small business, and we count pennies here, and that's because we're small operators, and we're still in some ways new in the world of radio. My show's 5 years old, maybe just a little bit less than 5 years old. And I do thank you for joining me here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7 Nooga Radio. I've been following a lot of rabbit trails in the past few days. My desk at home is just packed. I've been working on the Airbnb story and rereading court cases that touch on the authority of cities to impose fines. And I came across I've been looking under a doctrine called quo warranto, and right next to it is a chapter called quieting title. Now, quieting title is something that you do for a property, and there's a cloud. It's a suit in an equity court where you try to quiet or perfect or to adjudge the title to real estate or to remove the cloud thereover, right? So there's a cloud over a piece of real estate, an uncertainty about the ownership, and so you try to quiet title. In that discussion, there's the question about people not yet born, and here we have the Gay Pride March downtown yesterday, and the weeping over being an oppressed class. Queers are an oppressed class now. Well, that hasn't ever been true. I don't think in gracious, large-minded America. But we have Obergefell versus Hodges to make that claim, and now destroy, as it were, laws across the 50 states defending marriage. And of course, the war against marriage and the war against the unborn are the same one, right? Run by the same people, good progressives, all. And here, though, in parts of the law not affected by gay theory and queer decisions, Obergefell versus Hodges, we have reference to people who are not yet born. Notice they have a legal interest. They have a defensible legal interest in property, even though they're not yet born. And so the law, it's in Title 29 of the Tennessee Code, makes reference to such parties defendant may be designated by general words of description, such as the unborn children or representatives of children of a living person. So you have reference to people who don't exist, right? They're not outside the womb. They're either not yet conceived, or they are conceived and are in a 9-month period in utero, growing in the bosom of their, not the bosom, but the womb of their mothers. And so one question in the law is, well, how do you serve a person legally who's not in being yet? Well, in other words, if you're my listener, you're sued, right? You receive process from the county, and the sheriff's deputy comes and serves you process. It's called a process server, and he asks you, "Are you John Doe?" And you say, "Yes, I'm Joe." And he said, "Mr. Doe, I would like to serve you notice of a claim against you." Okay, so your served process, or that you have to show up to be a witness in a case, and that's a subpoena. Okay, so a subpoena or notice of claim against you. Well, how do you serve notice to someone who doesn't exist yet, right? The law is comprehensively human, and it accounts for these kind of details. So here's what it says: if in such a suit it shall appear that there is or may be any person who has been made a party defendant under so and so, a general notice of such suit shall be published in a newspaper within the county in which the land involved is situated, and that has to be done for 4 weeks consecutively. And then that would be that. If you publish a notice four times in a newspaper, general circulation, that shall be, quote, deemed constructive service on all unborn parties defendant. So the party being sued is not been born yet, right? And so publishing in a newspaper 4 times legally is deemed constructive service. In other words, practically service. That's the best anybody can do. So it's not called actual service. It's called constructive service. It's service by intent, right? You show that you gave the defendant baby, the fetus, right? He's been notified that there's a claim that might affect his rights and that he needs to respond to it. Well, what happens then? It goes on to talk about how there's a party called the guardian ad litem. Now, in child child abuse cases, cases where there's a dispute over custody, sometimes the state will assign an attorney or an interested party called a guardian ad litem. So it's a guardian in place of the parent. And so here you have notice of the unborn person by publication in the newspaper. And then there are parties who are not in being and who are not represented before the court. The court may, of its own motion, or on the motion of any party, appoint a suitable person to act as guardian ad litem or next friend of any such party or parties. And if there are or may be any parties defendant who have conflicting interests, the court may appoint different guardians ad litem. So what I find interesting is that you can have a guardian for an unborn child. A party and an attorney can be assigned to defend the property interest in land in a quiet title action of a baby who's not yet born. So you see, how can you have Obergefell versus Hodges? How can that be a law if you have a law like this, right? And Obergefell versus Hodges pretends to destroy the statutory meaning of marriage, and that every Republican, and of course every Democrat cheering on the decision, every Republican who pretends to care about the family, who pretends to care about the unborn, all of them take high court opinions as if they were laws. And they're not laws, they're just opinions. They're simply opinions. Well, this is David Tulis, and I was noticing last week there's a story about the effect of the Trump administration on prison populations. Apparently, it is thought by people who run the jailing industrial sector in the country that there's going to be a 2% rise in the federal jail population of 4,171 people to a total of 191,493 people who are in federal jail. And there's not going to be this rise without some resistance. The department's new policy ignored the growing bipartisan view that federal sentencing laws are in grave need of reform, according to a letter to Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, from Republican Mike Lee of Utah and Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Democrats Richard Durbin of Illinois and Cory Booker of New Jersey. In many cases, the new policy will result in counterproductive sentences that do nothing to make the public safer. The story mentions CoreCivic, which is the Correctional Corporation of America's new name, and also another company called Geo Group. In April, Geo Group landed a contract from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to build and run a $110 million, 1,000-bed detention facility in Texas. We look forward to working with both the new administration and the new Congress in continuing our long-standing partnership with the federal government, says Pablo Pace, a spokesman for Geo Group. There's a story on TV9's website this morning about people who mean very well and are taking a private bus, a private school bus, if you will. Brittany Harris and Colleen Ryan are trying to bring public school to the hinterlands, to the outlands. And it's not a mobile library, it's a mobile schoolhouse where the teachers, the story says, apply hands-on lessons to students, giving them the opportunity to have one-on-one sessions to better understand the concepts of literacy and mathematics. And it's interesting how whenever the private sector is brought into the service of the state, often homeschooling and the homeschooling idea is viewed very favorably. Harris says this kind of time isn't just good for the child, but it's great for the parents as well, since it gives them a chance to learn what extra steps they can take to make sure their students can succeed. Just having the parents understand, says Harris, that this is something you can do in your spare time to enrich their academics. It's just been amazing. And that's a quote from Brittany Harris, who's running a school bus out of, these are Hardy Elementary school teachers, and the bus is red, and it goes around town every weekend to the homes of county students. So it's funny. The school is here to help. In fact, what we have is so valuable and so good that we're going to send a bus out to get your children that's also free. And here now we have well-intentioned school teachers who are passing passing along in a bus and hope to stop at your neighborhood and then chat with you and your child and encourage you to be a homeschooler, to encourage you to give some attention. And what that does is really esteem parents in a way that the public school machinery disesteems parents. Public school trains parents to be careless and indifferent, and that's why the interventions by the state are almost always self-perpetuating. They perpetuate the need for themselves. You can't ever have a government program that ends the need for which it was created to alleviate. Right? Schools are attempting to alleviate lack of education, right? Lack of schooling, lack of training and teaching in morals and math and writing and public speaking. And so in providing that service, they've allowed parents to abdicate. And so we've had decades of abdication. We have had decades of alienation in that most important venture. In fact, the public school sector is the world's largest industry. Overall, according to John Taylor Gatto, it's the largest industry in the world, the American school system. And it is possible to call it an industry because though there are locales, though there are local school boards really are no longer vital to the machine. The machine runs all on its own through states, through nonprofit organizations, through think tanks, through data mining organizations, scientific organizations, behaviorist organizations, and politically connected groups that want to use the school as a platform for conveying to a captive audience the benefits of their perspective, right? Like, for example, the National Education Association wants people to believe in gay theory. It wants them to believe in abortion rights. It wants them to believe in state-managed, state-run economies, to believe in the beauties of collectivism, of the kind that we've enjoyed in Venezuela. And in the former Soviet Union. So we have that it's a captive audience and a captive system. And here we have two young teachers who are full of idealism, and they're pointing out parental involvement really is important, and it is. They're not wrong. They're not wrong in saying that. Yesterday at lunch at church, I had a very interesting conversation with a man who had personally suffered from the faults of the zoning-free world. He lived in an area that had no zoning control in Colorado before he moved here, and he found that a neighbor in a county area was putting in a chicken farm with two CAFOs, two confined what's a CAFO? Feeding operations, confined agricultural feeding operations, two CAFO buildings not far from his house. And the din of cocks crowing all the time. He said he called them roosters. I don't know, maybe he meant chickens, but he did say roosters. So chickens and cocks crowing night and day just made him mad. Okay, I don't mean just made him upset, but they probably took some toll on his peace of mind and on his psyche, if you will. And he asked me, well, don't you think that there's a wrong there? And I said, because we've been talking about the Chip Henderson proposal to ban the internet in certain parts of town, ban certain online sharing economy relationships in certain parts of Chattanooga outside from the law. And I said, well, Robert, I think that the marketplace would accept the fact that you sold your house and didn't get the $50,000 more as simply a result of the marketplace and not an injury. He said, yes, but I don't know if I can go that far in being a libertarian. I said, well, look, if you believe in freedom, then you have to accept that man who ran that property and put that farm on there had a right to do so. And if you had a grievance that was bad enough to be called a tort, bad enough to be a measurable injury, well, then you should have taken him to court. Well, at the time, he didn't have the money for that, and he just didn't have the drive to take his neighbor to court, who was annoying him with the cry of chickens night and day. And I said, well, that's what the courts are there for. They are there to solve grievances. He sold the house and thinks he could have gotten $50,000 more. Is that neighbor to blame for a loss? Is that a tort or a wrong against my colleague there at the lunch table at church? I said, no, it's not. Well, what would you do? What would you do if you had an investment and you lost 30% of its value because of changes in the market? Would you sniff out some some market actor and say, you dumped something on the market, or you passed a rumor, or you should have done X, Y, and Z, and therefore you've cost me my investment. Well, no, you wouldn't do that, would you? No, you just simply say, well, that's the market, and I didn't act quickly enough to get out of that investment, and I took a loss on it. You move in the market when you have the right knowledge, you have good knowledge, you can act. And so I think I would say that the Airbnb membership is not an injury or wrong to anybody. And if it were, the courts are there. The courts are open, as Jerry Summers says. The courts are open. And if you have a grievance or wrong, you can go there. Regulating Airbnb is not just unconstitutional and illegal. It's against the gig economy theory and does not remedy any real wrongs. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.